Who are you?
Michelangelo.
Okay, nice to meet you,
How are
Michael.
you? I've been out with black women or approached black women, and before they even knew me, they said, how many kids you got? How many baby mamas you got? Dating outside my race, I haven't had no issues like that at all.
Okay, and you are?
I'm Coro.
Coro.
I've been practicing abstinence for 3 years, 3 years with no sex. I'm looking for someone that can respect my views on this, someone that can love me for me.
And you are?
Bo.
Bo.
Yeah, I don't date black women now because of past experiences. They like to place that strong personality on you, and sometimes you just kind of, just like, you know, stand a woman's place.
So do you have any idea why you're here?
We share some of the same
Opinions.
About?
Why are black women so angry?
Was your mother angry?
To a certain degree, yes. She had that anger inside of her, but she made sure that she didn't pass it on to me. I see how she handles that, and she gives off that vibe that I get from women here, but when it came to me and how she approached me and taught me about women, she said, don't deal with this.
That's interesting, because as a black mother,
Yeah.
my work was to help my son understand it so that he would know how to stand in it with a black woman. Why are you here?
My situation's a little bit different because I traveled a lot when I was a kid, very talented, very gifted musically. So because of that, when I came back to my neighborhood, when I was dealing with certain black women, you're different. You talk funny, you dress funny, the music you listen to is funny. I don't like being because I had flip-flops on or I had a turtleneck, I'm gay. The problem I'm having is just because you're my culture and you're black, you don't get a pass. All the women in my family, I got a side of cousins that made me feel weird about that.
How can anybody make you feel anything? You get to choose how you feel.
You don't know that when you're kids, it's a psychological imprint.
What does that have to do with today?
Now, with a black woman, I have this in my mind before I even talk to you, she's gonna think I'm weird. And that bothered me a lot.
When I went to junior high school, I got bussed from Ocean Hill, Brownsville to Flatbush, and they spit on me and called me a nigger. They spit on me. And I was 13. And these were adults, not the children. So my point is this, that don't have nothing to do with who I am today. What is your experience?
A lot of black women, they don't want to talk to me. Some of them don't want to talk to me. Some of them don't want to talk to me because, number one, I'm a God-fearing man. I don't believe, like right now, I'm practicing abstinence. I'm not having any sex whatsoever.
Why you ain't in the church?
I am in the church. I'm gonna tell you about the church women. If you don't have a collar, they don't want to talk to you.
What's up, study group? Welcome to Black History Student. I'm your host, Black Butterfly. Today we'll be discussing the reasons why black men don't marry black women, because there are facts and myths that explain the root of the conflicts between both sexes. The unofficial war between black men and black women is believed to be a new phenomenon. Black men blame black women for preventing them from being men, and black women believe that black men aren't protectors and providers. These arguments are not new by any means and have been ongoing since the 1950s, and during this time, both black men and women adopted the white man's meaning of what manhood and womanhood are in the United States. The white man defines a man as an individual with a phallus or a penis, and the ability to dominate and control his women and children. A man protects his family while maintaining obedience and utter submission from them. Furthermore, a man provides his family with materials for their sustenance, including shelter and other necessities. But most importantly, a man has power and wealth, and these are things that black men in this country have not had as a collective since their enslavement. On the other hand, a woman is one who supports her man under all circumstances, even if he abuses his power as head of household. She's to stay sweet, obey and pray, and accept whatever he chooses to subject her to, even to her own detriment. She follows his lead, even if he's leading nowhere. And a woman remains loyal and available, despite the man not reciprocating the commitment. She is to do whatever needs to be done to make him feel like a man, even if he's doing everything but being one. The problem with these descriptions of womanhood is that, just as black men, black women have been also enslaved and degraded, disrespected, and humiliated for over 500 years by both white and black men. Therefore, they refuse to be re-enslaved just to make their men feel like men. Now, the white man's ideas of manhood and womanhood are part of the nonsensical American dream, as they aren't realistically attainable, especially for black people. All the systems and institutions in this country are designed specifically for the benefit of white society. Since the slaves were emancipated in 1865, white people have done everything in their power to prevent black people from being able to realize this patriarchal idea of manhood and womanhood. But simultaneously, they feared the uprising of black men, taking the freedoms that were granted to them at birth. Therefore, whites passed legislation to give black people the perception of liberty and equality while preventing all actions they've taken to benefit from such privileges. For instance, Congress passed the Voting Rights Act of 1965 to guarantee black people's right to vote. However, they gave them nothing to vote for. Black people have never had any political representation, and therefore their votes have done nothing to advance their inferior position in society. Author MICHELE Wallace correlates black people's lack of representation to their current position in society in her book called Black Macho and the Myth of the Superwoman. MICHELE says that today I understand the problem as one of representation. My view then was that blacks have been systematically deprived of the continuity of their own African culture, not only by the oppression of slavery and the racism and segregation that followed it, but also by the integration and assimilation, which had denied them of their history of struggle and the memory of their autonomous cultural practices. This did more than make it inevitable that black men would be sexist or misogynistic. It also made inevitable black women's completely dysfunctional self-hatred. Now, to be clear, although there are a large percentage of black men that are abusive, patriarchal white imitators, there is also a significant number of black men that abide by the African idea of manhood and womanhood. These black men are indeed protectors and providers that love and respect their black women and children. They are loyal to black women and recognize the strength she brings to them. They embrace the black woman's revolutionary accomplishments in higher education, employment, wealth building, and self-love. There are black men that work very hard to sustain their family and shake their heads in shame at those that doesn't. These black men recognize the hate and danger that others pose to black women and children and want nothing to do with such men. They condemn these guys and see their jealousy as the weakness that it is. On the other hand, narcissistic, misogynistic black men take their self-hatred out on black women and children. The vitriolic abuse towards and the jealousy of black women makes these types of men pit all non-black peoples against black women. They publicly emphasize that non-black women are better options because, unlike black women, these women are supposedly fit, feminine, friendly, submissive, and cooperative. Black women are said to be unattractive. Black men say they smell bad. They call them useless welfare queens that act masculine and are the least desirable species on earth. A perfect exemplification of a black man that detests black women is a YouTube content creator named Anton Daniels. This little old black man has almost 12,000 followers that he spewed the vilest propaganda about black women and children. Most of his videos are filled with stereotypical venom that he spits at black women, false statistics to validate his rhetoric, and other black men that supports his jealous views of black women. What's ironic is that he's married to a black woman and has black children. Now, I'm not sure about his family dynamics, so I won't get into that. I don't know whether he's abusive or not the way that he is on camera, but his YouTube persona suggests that he's extremely hostile when he doesn't get his way, and he's highly aggressive when he expresses his hate of black women. Recently, Anton was on a panel with 9 other guests when he went on a tangent about his revulsion of black women. Take a look at the clip.
Really wrong with the black community is that the woman is out of her purpose and she's not a helpmeet no more. Yep. She's the enemy. She's more of an enemy than the white man ever has. She's more of an enemy than anybody in history has ever been to the black community because she's the very person that comes in with deceit and looks to use you and then disperse of you when she's done with you. And then she'll move on when it's all said and done and then say, well, what about the kids? Fuck them kids and fuck that woman too. Throw that hoe out with the bathwater. Throw the baby out with the bathwater. Start the fuck over. Get a whole new group of women, and then fix the community that way.
Now, Anton Daniels is obviously another black man that's envious of black women. He projects the image he views of himself onto the most vulnerable people, black women and children. Like many black men that boast of possessing wealth, Anton makes it very apparent that he's in competition with black women by ostentatiously boasting of having more materials than them and demanding that bank statements be compared to verify who has more earnings. Anton is either trying to prove that he's more of a woman than black women, or that black women aren't man enough compared to him. Regardless, this behavior is typical of many insecure black men that can't compete with their white oppressors and therefore aim to dominate, disrespect, and dehumanize black women. Now, black men that prefer to marry white women represents 24% of the population in America, and the black men that don't care for white women still don't marry black women. Then, to further support their point that black women are marriage worthy, black men just like Anton Daniels argue that black women essentially are a homogenous group that possess the same characteristics indicative of men. Michele Wallace describes the stereotypical black woman that most black men believe represents all of them. She said that black women saw any kindness to them as weakness. They seemed to wait for some male to take charge of their lives. And when there was no such male around, they stopped living. They went wherever the tide swept them. They were in limbo. These women followed the real prescription for womanhood. First, she found the man around her who had the most money and attached herself to him. Her life began and ended with him, belonged to him. He determined her moral character. If he had none, she had none. In the world the black woman comes from, the best man is automatically defined as the man with the most money and power that he can get. In the ghetto, this is often the pimp, the drug dealer, the numbers runner, the common thief. But he might just as well be, and is for middle-class black girls, the public official, the highly paid executive in the poverty structure, the scotch-drinking, self-absorbed doctor, lawyer, professor, entertainer whose only concern is with his summer home, his Mercedes-Benz, his bank account, his Gucci shoes, and the lightness of his wife's skin. Aimless women with no direction if men aren't guiding them is how many black men view black women. The dysfunctional self-hatred of these types of black women aren't a true representation of the complex array of black female characteristics and behaviors. There is an extensive percentage of black women that embrace and reciprocate kindness, are sexually conservative and confident, that recognize the black man's burdens and are willing to try to alleviate them, that take care of their physical and mental health, love their jobs and careers, recognize the blessings in their marriage and children, inspire sisterhood, motherhood, and womanhood, have taken advantage of the autonomy they possess over their lives, and most importantly, love everything about blackness. All black women are not alike, and most of those that perpetuate an African idea of love and family structure are overlooked and ignored. These women refute the narrative of all black women being dysfunctional, self-hating, unmarriable, masculine outcasts. Still, there are indeed a large percentage of dysfunctional, self-hating black women that have assimilated into white culture to the point of imitating it. Several black women are compromising their health to be white by bleaching their skin or wearing layers of makeup lighter than their natural complexion to appear light or white. Several dysfunctional, self-hating black women try their best to look, act, and sound like white women, aiming to convince white society that they aren't like the other black people. Candace Owens is a perfect example of such a black woman who suffers from dysfunctional self-hatred. Not only is Candace Owens married to a European white man and has biracial children, but she has an international following that she spews white supremacist propaganda about black people to, especially black Americans. What's interesting, however, is that she comes from a poor black family and was essentially abandoned by her black mother and father, forced to be raised by her grandparents. She ended up grasping the attention of white politicians and is now speaking the white supremacist rhetoric that whites believe but can't publicly proclaim. Nevertheless, Candace Owens isn't the only black woman that aims to appear white, especially in the national light. Most mainstream black female artists perpetuate the white idea of blackness, entertaining white people like Sambos. Michele Wallace explains black self-hatred and the superficial ways of disguising it. She says, for me then, to say that black men hated black women or vice versa was simply an extension of saying that black people hated themselves. Black men would define their masculinity and thus their liberation in terms of superficial masculine characteristics, demonstrable sexuality, physical prowess, the capacity for warlike behavior. Black women would define their femininity in terms of their lack of these same superficial masculine characteristics. Precisely because of the myth of their inferiority, the black female stereotype had always portrayed them as oversexed, physically strong, and warlike. One of the myths I called Black Macho, and the other I called the Superwoman. White people have allowed blacks to integrate into their society, but discriminated against them, preventing them from advancing in the entire spectrum of human activities, including economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, religion, politics, sex, and war. Police officers surround every black neighborhood, seemingly to beat, imprison, and kill the exact thugs and criminals that their supremacist system creates and profits from. Not to mention, if too many blacks move into their community, most of them will relocate from the area. White people say that blacks have access to the free market, but prevent them from obtaining the resources, especially monetary resources, necessary for entrepreneurship. Michele Wallace says that the white man gave blacks the right to buy, but no money to buy with. The right to go where they wanted, but no transportation to get there. This has been black people's reality since 1865, when Congress began passing legislation claiming to give them alleged freedom and equality. There has never been, nor will there ever be, in this lifetime, freedom and equality for black people, because this country was specifically designed to only benefit European white people. Although many black people were native to America prior to the white invasion, most was stolen from Africa to slave for poor European whites that didn't have the capacity to fend for themselves. Therefore, they forced both native and kidnapped African people into slavery to advance the white man and his people. If whites were to actually free and treat themselves equal to black people, there would be too much at risk for them. This would force them to compete against black strength and possibly end up where they started, as poor European white immigrants. Therefore, whites allow specks of blacks here and there to advance in class status to give the illusion of freedom and equality for all black people. Michele Wallace tells us about Norman Mailer's essay, The White Negro, where he explains white people's fear of the black man acquiring equality. According to Norman Mailer, since the Negro knows about the ugliness and danger of life than the white, it is probable that if Negro can win his equality, he will possess a potential superiority. A superiority so feared that the fear itself has become the underground drama of domestic politics. Like all conservative political fear, it is the fear of the unforeseeable consequences. For the Negro's equality would tear a profound shift into the psychology, the sexuality, and the moral imagination of every white alive. These facts are important because they explain why most black men believe they can't be men, and why many black women won't be provided for or protected by them. This country is not meant for blacks to be citizens, and therefore have never viewed them as full human, perhaps 3/4 human. Black people only make up 13.6% of the population, thus it wouldn't make economic sense to free the people that provide a significant amount of wealth to the nation. However, after the Moynihan report was published by Daniel Patrick Moynihan in 1965, the government viewed the black plight a bit differently. The purpose of the report was to convince the White House that the destruction of the black family organization is rooted in slavery and continues through poor legislation. Moynihan claimed that improving the economic status of black men would progress the conditions of black women and children. The report also declared that black women are the primary reason that black men are oppressed. In the report, Moynihan says, in essence, the Negro community has been forced into a matriarchal structure which, because it is out of line with the rest of American society, seriously retards the progress of the group as a whole and imposes a crushing burden on the Negro male. Obviously, not every instance of social pathology afflicting the Negro community can be traced to the weakness of family structure. But once or twice removed, it will be found to be the principal source of the most aberrant, inadequate, or antisocial behavior that did not establish but now serves to perpetuate the cycle of poverty and deprivation. Apparently, this quote from the Moynihan report has been used as a talking point to argue that black women are preventing black men from being men. Moynihan claimed that the black woman's supposed position as matriarch is not only unrelated to mainstream's definition of womanhood, but also the primary reason that black society is subjugated and oppressed. What Moynihan deliberately or ignorantly disregarded is that the system of white supremacy forcefully places black women in the position of provider, while simultaneously leaving her and her children vulnerable.
Each week, American History TV's Real America brings you archival films that help provide context for today's public affairs issues.
Our guest today on Meet the Press is the author of the controversial study, The Negro Family, Mr. Daniel P. Moynihan. His report, prepared when he was Assistant Secretary of Labor, at first was warmly praised, It has recently been sharply criticized. Mr. Moynihan, a professor of political science, is now at Wesleyan University. He was one of the drafters of the nation's anti-poverty program, and he has just been appointed by Mayor-elect Lindsay to the New York City Poverty Task Force. Now we'll have the first questions from Mr. Moynihan from Lawrence E. Spivak, permanent member of the Meet the Press panel.
Here's a quotation, for example, from a recent article by William Ryan, a Harvard psychologist, who criticizes your report in The Nation. And this is what he writes, quote, "The implicit point is that Negroes tolerate promiscuity, illegitimacy, one-parent families, welfare dependency, and everything else that is supposed to follow." Now, that's the criticism he makes of your report. Now, how do you answer those charges?
I'm not responsible for the fact that he can't read. As E. Franklin Frazier said, and I quoted from him at some length, there is a lot of evidence that the Negro middle-class family, when it gets its opportunity, gets a bearing, is, if anything, more stern, more rigid than most. But the evidence is simply clear. Negro Americans live like any other Americans, and when they're forced into the ghetto and forced into disorganization, they have no better protections than anyone else.
I'd like to ask you one specific question, which the New York Times quotes you today as saying. You say that 44% of the children in Harlem are illegitimate. Now, how do you know that?
Those are statistics of the New York City Department of Health, sir. 10 health districts in central Harlem, the area which the great American sociologist Kenneth Clark described in his HARU report as having undergone a massive deterioration of the fabric of society and its institutions, and right under our prosperous noses that happened. That hasn't existed for 50 years. That's happened in the last 15 years in this America, and we've been sitting around thinking things have been getting better, and they haven't been getting better for those children. And I think I, for one, if you see what people can face for the civil rights movement in the way of sheriffs, in the way of howling mobs, in the way of the disapproval of their entire society, well, I think I would hope certainly I'm willing to face the disapproval of a few white liberals from Boston who think I shouldn't raise the subject because it's impolite.
Mr. Novak.
Mr. Moynihan, in your report you say, quote, "Equality of opportunity almost ensures inequality of results," unquote. Are you proposing preferential treatment on the hiring of Negroes?
I believe this country owes the American Negro his back wages, yes.
Should the federal government support preferential treatment for Negroes then?
I believe what President Johnson said in his Howard University speech. You cannot keep a man in chains for 3 centuries, then take the chains off and say suddenly, okay, you're free to run the race of life with anybody else. They have to be made, people have to be given the opportunity to compete with effective resources. And I believe that we should make a special effort.
Michele Wallace says that to anyone fairly knowledgeable about the history of the black community, Moynihan's argument was clearly ridiculous. For one thing, the number of fatherless black households did not become significantly large until, perhaps coincidentally, blacks began to be more successful economically in American society. Despite the denials and protests, he had hit a responsive chord. Just as black men were busy as attacking Moynihan, they were equally busy attacking the black woman for being a matriarch. Although no one would admit it, Moynihan had managed to provide authoritative support for something a lot of black men wanted to believe anyways, that the black woman had substantial advantages over the black man educationally, financially, and in employment. Alright, study group, before I go on, please take a few seconds to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell to know when new videos are released or when I go live. This is a significant way to support the channel, so I'd really appreciate it if you go ahead and do that for me. I'll take a moment of silence to let you do it. Okay, thank you, study group. I really appreciate your support. I really do. Now let's continue. The Moynihan report became advantageous to black men as the government provided black men with more opportunities to acquire wealth. It was argued that the more income a black man could obtain, the more black women he'd marry and improve the black family structure. But the reality proved to be quite interesting, because the rates of black men's college admission, graduation, and employment had indeed improved. These black men acquired professional jobs that paid more to them than black women. However, The data showed that these improvements hardly did anything to change the family structure in black communities. Black female heads of households increased, and black women became even poorer. This means that once black men acquired more wealth, they didn't use their opportunities to build the black family. Employers, college administrators, and most of white society wanted to improve the conditions of black men, leaving black women in the poorhouse. Still, most men didn't even take advantage of the opportunities they've been proclaiming belonged to them to begin with. These men found it easier to succumb to inferiority and blame black women for their lack of success and poor decision making. Here's the thing. It's well known amongst white society that by subjugating the men in a society will grant them direct access to the women and children of that society. And because the global collective of black men are essentially prisoners of war, black women and children are not provided for or protected. Although modern black people are impacted by these facts, a large portion of the population don't even try to overcome them. And yes, there are anecdotal groups of blacks that have penetrated a thick layer of subjugation and managed to advance to middle class, upper middle class, or even affluence. But the data shows that the masses live in slums, barely attend slave schools, work slave wages, are imprisoned, and living as people below the poverty line does. Most black men have been conditioned to accept their inferior status as castrated males that can't be men. And it wasn't black women that convinced them to do this. It was white men. The white man has all the power and full access to do as he pleases with black and white women and children, while black men sits and watch. And even though black women are fully committed to black men, despite his oppression and disrespect, these women are accused of being undesirable, masculine, and incapable of doing anything to appease them. Consequently, the covert and public abuse and condemnation of black women by black men are causing many black women to divest from them altogether. These days, white men are becoming more appealing to many black women. Interracial marriages between white men and black women have risen since the 1967 Loving versus Virginia Supreme Court case that ended laws banning interracial marriages in the United States. The white man fought to have legal access to black women and won. This infuriated black men, made them jealous of white men and resent black women. And to make matters worse, they believe that white men have given black women little treats like access to education, leadership positions in their companies, and an overall upper class lifestyle, essentially privileges that black men believe they should have. Therefore, he accuses the black woman of betraying him for white men and taking advantage of the benefits warranted by white men. MICHELE Wallace says Sapphire, Mammy, tragic mulatto, wench. She's always had more opportunities than the black man because she was no threat to the white man, so he made it easy for her. But curiously enough, she frequently ends up on welfare. Nevertheless, she is more educated and make more money than the black man. She is more likely to be employed and more likely to be professional than the black man. And subsequently, she provides the main support for the family. Not beautiful, rather hard looking unless she had white blood, but then very beautiful. And if she is middle class, she tends to be uptight about sex, prudish. She is hard on and unsupportive of black men, domineering, castrating. She tends to wear the pants around her house, tough, unfeminine. In 1970, there was a debate aired on national television between black men and women regarding the dysfunctional relationship between them. Their main points echo the same arguments made today by both sexes. Let's take a look at this clip.
I think that what's happening in America as far as black men, black women is concerned is that there's a revolution within a revolution. We are fighting our own woman. Our woman will not allow us to emerge as black men. No. But our black women, who has been put in this role of aiding white America, white structure, and castrating the black male, has continued doing this. She cannot live with us. It's not that we can't live with her.
Are you blaming us? Are you saying that it's our fault that this happened?
No, I'm not blaming black America women. I just said that I'm blaming the system. They are victims of the system like the black male.
Well, why do you say that we are castrating you? You say that you want to be the leaders. Okay. Well, what about the black professional woman? Are you saying that there should be no black professional woman? Are you trying to deny black women the right to be creative, the right to function?
We're not asking for you to take a back seat. We're saying that you have got to be astute enough
and can view the situation well enough where you just automatically know what your role is and step back. And whenever you want to have that aggressive thing, this is the thing that the young black man today is not going to tolerate. My old man tolerated it because his old man tolerated it. It came up for years and years and years. But today, the young black man is not going to take it. He's going to be out there as a leader.
White America has used black women to keep the black male in his place. And you're still aiding him by saying, well, we are qualified, we want to work, we can help.
Okay, how are you going to reprogram men so that they don't let us take over what's supposed to be their responsibility? And men that I have had dealings with, they are perfectly willing to sit back and let us do anything we want to.
I don't think that you have to reprogram men. I think you have to reprogram women.
No, you have to reprogram the man so that he will forcefully take what belongs to him, because you know women, as long as we can get, we're going to get, and it's part of our being. We're going to do anything to you that you let us, whether we want to or not.
You don't want to live on the level of income that I can afford you in love. Me, on the basis of that, you want to always be inspired to have all those things that's a part of the great middle-class white American society, and because I can't deliver these things to you, you say that you are not a man.
I don't measure a man by how much money he can bring home. I measure a man by how he treats me, whether when I'm tired and I'm sick and I'm scared.
Okay, so you guys saw in the debate, black men argued that black women denied them their right to be men because they took advantage of the privileges white men provided to them. Those benefits were essentially the ability to provide for the family unit. On the other hand, black women contended that it wasn't their fault that black men refused to forcefully take the advantages that they believed were warranted to them. Furthermore, black women asserted that their definition of manhood didn't align with that of white societies, but instead were nurtured in African principles of manhood, basically being a protector and supporter of women and children. To this day, however, black men claim that black women should drown in the ocean of struggle with them, accepting whatever little or nothing they choose to provide, just so they can feel like men. But it's nonsensical for black women to accept the bare minimum most black men are offering, especially since they've experienced having nothing since they were stolen from Africa. Angry and overwhelmed, some black men tried to poetically convince white men that they were human, such as James Baldwin and W.E.B. Du Bois, or even Martin Delaney or Harold Cruz, and etc. But they failed. Then other black men tried again during the civil rights movement because they passively fought for what the white man took using brute force. Malcolm X might have been successful in galvanizing the black masses and acquiring manhood by any means necessary, but they killed him before he could reach his goal. Subsequently, black men tried to gain manhood again with the Black Power movement during the 1960s through the 80s, raising their fists in the air, demanding authority and representation. But these demands went unheard, and whites infiltrated and dismantled the movement, exiling, imprisoning, and killing its black members. Since then, there hasn't been any effective movements that have conspicuously benefited black people, and especially not the Black Lives Matter movement. Please don't mention that. The Black Lives Matter movement was a movement meant specifically for black homosexuals, and their goal was to dismantle the family union. So Black Lives Matter was not a movement for the black collective. Whites' reactions to the black man's passive and radical demands and actions have always extinguished the fighting fire inside of them. Consequently, most black men have given up on even trying to attain manhood and instead opted to blame black women for not giving it to them. Then, to appease black men's growing rage, white men gave them another means of acquiring manhood by legalizing access to white women. Therefore, instead of uniting and fighting for liberation, black men have settled to declare war against black women and obtain a white woman by any means necessary. Now, it's a fact that white men and black women sparked the legality of interracial relationships in this country. However, since then, black men have doubled in mixed partnerships with non-black women. Today, 24% of the black male population married outside of their race, compared to only 12% that of black women. Interracial relationships make up 2.9% of the biracial population. Most black men that marry non-black women either lack racial pride and could care less to obliterate their blackness, or they try to erase their black heritage, which bears the scars of life not as a man. They've been conditioned to believe that access to white women makes them real men, so they parade around with non-black women, erasing their blackness while simultaneously believing they're getting even with black women. Michele Wallace perfectly describes why most black men prefer white women over black women. She says that America had made one point painfully clear. As long as the black man did not have access to white women, he was not a man. The lynching, murders, beatings, the miscegenation laws designed to keep the black man and white woman apart, while the white man helped himself to black women, created in him a tremendous sense of personal urgency on this matter. America had not allowed him to be a man. He wanted to be one. What bothered America the most? The black man and the white woman. Therefore, if he had a white woman, he would be more of a man. And as it became more and more apparent that white America would regard any serious bid for social, economic, and political equality as declaration of a full-scale war, the white woman, black man version of freedom began to make a great deal of sense. Come 1966, the black man had two pressing tasks before him: a white woman in every bed and a black woman under every heel. Overall, the main reason black men don't marry black women is because black women reminds them of their inadequacy. Since slavery, black men have never been able to sufficiently protect and provide for black women and children. They've hardly been able to protect or provide for themselves. This humiliating reality causes black men to resent black women for being forced matriarchs that are practically struggling to survive themselves. Black men have conceded to castrated inferiors in white society, fighting for manhood by acquiring white women and erasing their manless black heritage by bearing biracial children. Although this is proven to be detrimental to the black family structure, black women continue to push forward, fighting for equality to improve life for themselves and their children. However, until black men overcome subjugation, acquire racial pride, and realize their sole purpose for existence is for the black family, there will always be an unofficial war between black men and women. Black people will remain substandard to all people, and black women and children will continue to be vulnerable in society. Alright, study group, so go ahead and leave some comments below. Do you agree with my commentary? Why do you believe that black men don't marry black women? Is the lack of black unions designed by the white patriarchal supremacist system? Do non-black women actually make better mates for black men? Or are white men better providers and protectors for black women? Let me know your thoughts. Also, if you have any topics that you'd like for me to cover, please send them to blackhistorystudent@gmail.com. This email is listed in the description section below. If you're interested in reading any of the books that I've referenced in this commentary, I've listed them in the description section below. And if you decide to purchase them, please do so using my affiliate links, because I do receive a little commission for each sale, and you will be supporting the channel by doing so. If you would like to read the article on this topic, please follow the link in the description section or visit blackhistorystudent.com. Finally, if you haven't done so already, like the video. If you're new, subscribe, and if you loved it, share it. Until next time, bye study group.